Hello everyone, it's Wills again. Today's project, quite exciting. We're doing in the style of Salvador Dali, surrealism. And we're going to be doing a little sort of an expression of the present political position, shall we say. It's based loosely on this persistence of memory. This isn't a complete painting actually, it's something that you find online. They cut paintings down, all sorts of things. I've got the full painting here on the other side of me because I'm going to be using some of this background and the sort of layout, the rough layout, and using the dear old melted watches and this sort of stuff, and the whole idea of the deflated head. The deflated head is going to be Boris Johnson. What Dali did actually was a self-portrait, I believe. This looks like Salvador Dali, apart from the fact that the top of the head is a dead duck. Got this prepared board. So this is a flexible board, and it's had two coats of white acrylic, ordinary white acrylic, to give it a key. And I've painted it one way, let it dry overnight, painted it another. So it feels like a smooth canvas. And the board has a temporary frame on, just to stop it from bending, but it has a little bit of give. Dali used a very smooth finish on his paints. He used a lot of oil, he used smooth palette knives, he liked brushes, he liked sable brushes I believe. But his paintings have a very smooth finish to them, so I'm going to try and reproduce some of the smooth finish. So I'll be using today, I had to dig this out of a box, I can tell you, refined linseed oil. So I've already drawn in the surface of the sea here, so because it's got to be pretty dead straight, and I'm going to pinch some of those cliffs. I'm just going to draw those in roughly. I've got here Derwent Graphitone. Graphitone's a marvellous drawing aid because actually it's water soluble. So if you go wrong you can wash it off. Not going to worry too much. And they go to about this far in the painting. Okay, that's the down bit there, and the down bit here. That's all I'm going to do, it's just so I know that it's there, because I want the background colours to be really quite smooth. Here we go to mixing. Good old fashioned roundy paint, this is flake white. As you see, it's quite a thick flake white. Okay, so I'll put gloves on, because the problem with linseed oil, as you see, it leaks out from the caps. It smells great though. So, no gels or anything today. Large brush. First of all, the water. I'm one of those people who tends to work with the work rather high up. Now, Salvador Dali didn't do that. He actually worked with his work quite low, and he kept his paints and his brushes on like a coffee table, a low coffee table, so it was low below him. And he mixed his paints, he had long brushes, and he used to mix his paints very gently. I can't be precious about the paints like that, I'm afraid, so. But we are getting the smooth finishes here. I'll try to keep it smooth. So I'm using a large flat hogshead to get this on, get the colour on. There's some blue that goes into that, but I'm not putting that on quite yet. So I've mixed in a little Naples yellow with the white and the oil. And this is for the sky here. So Salvador Dali was a surrealist. He started with Impressionism when he was young, but he became a surrealist. But he did tend to have his skyscapes particularly, and some of his landscapes, quite realistic. He did very beautiful skyscapes. He really had some talent for that. So there's not a lot in this particular sky. He was capable of very fine painting. So just putting some white into the top of that. Take that right to there. And now we're going to mix in a little bit of blue. Winton 21. French ultramarine. It's not quite the right colour, I can already see that, so I'm going to go back to cerulean blue. Put a bit of that in. Nearer to it anyway, to be honest. A little bit more linseed. Just picking up the white paint, not the Naples yellow. So those two blues have both gone into that now. I'm letting it mix itself really, this mid-tone here. I will run a sponge or something over it in a minute. But we've got a slightly bent horizon on the original. So I'm going to stick partly with that. Dali somehow managed to make his paintings look extremely deep. It was his choice of colours. Very clever in that respect. A bit darker in the top there. Okay, a little bit of sponge here, and I'm just going to sponge that surface a little bit. So this is making the colour change a little bit more subtle. To those of you who aren't yet painting a lot, don't get afraid of anything like this. If it goes wrong, but most of the time you'll find that it's done the thing that you want. Fairly happy with that. Just want to bring a bit of blue back in here. That will be my sky. So, the bottom of the cliff. And the edges. edges of the water. Okay, I'm just going to leave that as that for the moment to express the distance and the water itself. Just take that off there. We can do a lot with oil paint. It's very manipulative sort of medium. A bit more blue going into here. So we can move oil paint about. I quite like that. So that is the sea and the sky, and I'm going to say that they're done. They're done to a Dali standard. So I'm just going to have a quick clean up of this brush and change palettes and be right back with you. What I'm going to do is put this Dali cliff in. No, it won't be exactly like his, but I'm going to use his method. So he used a lot of black to outline things, very unusual. So we'll put the cliff in first, and this little bit of beach here, and then we'll work onto here, because I'm not going to use the same colourings. So in this particular one, Dali has used earth, really, just earth, and that was to throw the painting forward at you. I'm going slightly lighter than that. I want sand, sands of time. I'm using Winton colours, Winton oils, and I've got yellow ochre going in. I've got a little lemon yellow. I'll put it separately because I'll be mixing it at different rates. And then a tiny touch of the old linseed oil. This is really good linseed oil. This is Winsor & Newton again, but it's refined. So a lot of the smell goes out of it as well. Put the brush in the oil first. To give me shaping on the brush. Just want to get that edge how I want it. So I'll put a little bit more ochre, solid ochre on here. Okay. Run the yellow back into it. Salvador Dali, yes, he chose surrealism, I think, because it suited his personality. He was a strange sort of bloke. He wasn't a particularly nice, pleasant sort of man at all. He was rather odd. He had rather odd ideas about everything, politics, everything else. And but he was a very fine painter. And I don't think his family wanted him to be an artist at all. That worked well. And he worked in rather a fussy style. Beautiful finish on his paintwork. But he wasn't just a painter, he designed. He actually designed and made jewellery. I think a lot of people don't realise that, because his jewellery would have gone to very rich clients. It's probably in collections. People probably never see it. A lot of his jewellery was based on the human eye. So he made brooches, nurse watches, things of that sort, using the human eye, with precious stones in. I mean, proper jewellery. Okay, this is coming on quite well. Let me just go over here. Put that piece of edging in, might come a bit further down with it. Just picked up a bit of blue then. Dali was a brush mixer as well. He did use palette knives, but he did mix with his brushes. He used to sit at a distance from his palette. I'm just smoothing this. Yeah, so very interesting man, just not a very likeable one. But his style's extremely interesting. So what I've done is I've put the background colour of the cliffs in. Now, as I say, Dali himself used a lot of black to get detail. I mean, not a lot of artists can get away with this and do it very well, but he did do it really well. I've only got the tiniest bit of paint on the brush, but it actually just brings up the tone slightly. So we're not ready for the black yet. Just going to let that dry for a little while. It's got the linseed oil in, the surface will dry quite quickly. And I'm going to look at now the rest of the picture. But first of all, we've got to look at this head. I'm going to use a head. I'm going to put a head in. But the rest of the painting isn't going to be anything like this. And the head isn't going to be anything like this one. It's going to be my own version. And it's going to be my own version of this chap. This is Boris. This is Boris after he realised they were kicking him out. He's got some fantastic features. See these eyes? The brows and the eyelids follow the same sort of directions. Give this worried look with the bags under. The nose fits Dali very well. The dead duck head. We're going to use the dead duck. We're going to put that all in a moment. And we're going to put Boris's face here. Dali would only show one side. We're going to show part of the downward side of the face. This is a sketch I did last night. This is Boris's face. This is the dead duck. Running into the desert, Boris's hair. So I know roughly what I'm doing. I'm going on to my graphitone here. Just looking at the placing. Don't want it too central. But I do want it to come towards the bottom of the picture here. A little bit more than Dali would have done. I want to go further into the desert. and I've got plans for here. I'm just going to put this box in, very similar to this, but I'm going to use, at a very different angle, the budget box. There's the budget box there. So for all you non-Brits, every year we have a budget in Parliament, and the Chancellor of the Exchequer, he makes up the budget with his staff. They come into Parliament and read it out. It's a long session. The Chancellor of the Exchequer is the only person in Parliament allowed to drink alcohol on the job. He's given a very large tumbler of whiskey to get him through the speech, because he could be speaking on his feet for 3 hours. And he keeps all the papers in the budget box. It's one of the government boxes. They're all red and they've all got the royal crest on. So quickly, that is what this budget box is going to be. Here is going to be the head of the dead duck, and here I'm going to run a lake. I'm going to run a lake straight into the sand with no edges. One is going to run into the other in a Dali-like way, and I'm going to use some of the painting of Narcissus, Transformation of Narcissus, because Dali's water in that is just terrific. So I'm going to use that, and I'm going to have a hand coming out here. I've done a sketch of the hand, and we'll talk about that when we get to it. So flake white and oil again, a little touch of rose madder to give that sort of colour that Dali has used for this, what is virtually a dead person. A dead Salvador Dali. Because I don't know how historians and critics think about it, but these things where they're dead heads in deserts and all that sort of stuff, they look like self-portraits to me. I'm fairly certain they are. Bit of rose madder, a tiniest touch here of yellow ochre, just putting a bit of yellow ochre in there. Rose madder is a little bit powerful. So I'm just going to put the basic colour on the head. I've got to look at this original and my sketch at the same time. I've gone that way there. Now when you're painting, you see the sense of using graphitone. It's not like charcoal or any of those heavy pencils. The lead doesn't pick up with the paint. A boon to any painter. So that is the basic colour for that. And then we've got this ducky type tongue coming out here. I'm not going to put that on as yet. So I can virtually put on now the sandy background. So that's another thing to mix. Ochre again, burnt umber, maybe just a touch of vermilion, I'll put it here, and a touch of purple for the darker tones there, linseed oil, going to this nice new brush here. It's a flat size 12 and it's very soft hog's hair, very soft. I'm just going to power through this part of the painting because really this is just slapping colour on for the moment. So here we go. Just try to lessen the brush marks a little bit here. And this will be our little lake eventually. So I got a little bit of kitchen towel because I didn't like the lake. It wasn't quite big enough. It wasn't the peculiar shape that I'd hoped for. So I've just been rubbing at the paint. See, it's almost dry. Just rubbing at the paint to make the shape. And then using this over here, painting of Dali's, looking at that water on there, I thought, well, that would be rather nice to have a little canal coming away from the lake. So I just wiped straight down there to this box. And now I've decided I'm going to put a tunnel in the box. So there's the lake, rather like a canal. A bit more René Magritte than Salvador Dali. I don't think Salvador would mind that. Just put a bit more white into that. I'm sure I'm going to get mixed colours here. Just moving paint about a little bit now, just so I get the effects and shapes that I want. Like that. I can use that later and paint back to it. This is a typical Dali type of lake. I don't know whether he struggled with painting water. He didn't paint it particularly well, but he used to come up with this marvellous effect. Okay, I'm just going to leave it at that, just for this moment. Well, I thought I was, but I saw something else I could do. Just leave it at that for the moment, because the lake's going to have something coming out of it. And I can go back and concentrate maybe on some of the detail of the cliffs and the face, while that's sort of drying on the surface. Okay, so we'll look at some detail now. Perhaps put a little bit of the beginning of the detail into the face, and also some of the detail in the cliff. And we'll do it Dali style, I think. Okay, so I'm just going to look at a bit of the detail of the face. So I've got my sketch over here, and I've got the original over there. And I'm going to look at the dead duck first of all. I'm just going to use a bit of a deeper pink to get some shape. I'm using a flat, small flat sable. I think it's close enough. We'll do some little details later. So we've got then the hair. Stop at that and put some shadow into it after the surface has dried a little bit. But that's a good beginning for Boris the Dead Duck. A little bit of detail now. A little bit of ivory black there. This nice brown that I mixed. Quite like this brown. Bit of black, bit of purple. Black on there. There. Got that eyeball. These eyebrows need to be darker. It's supposed to be a duck's tongue, that. Okay, come back to that later. And come back to this hair as well. So there's just bits of shadowing need to be done in the hair, but I just need to lift my book off here. So I've got a little sketch underneath. So what I'm going to do is have a hand coming out of this pond, this lake here. It's going to be a hand in the Dali style. And I've just got to decide where. I'm just going to do a bit of old kitchen roll and dab some of this paint off so I don't get too much mixing. I've just taken some of that off. It's not too bad, but the linseed oil takes a long time to actually dry and set. 2 lots of flesh colours down here that I'm still using. And what I might do is take a bit of this pink and put that into. Right, let's start on this hand. So this is the hand. That's better, the paint's thickened up slightly. This is just the background really to the detail. And I want this hand to be holding one of the melting watches that Dali was famous for. And I want the watch to be here in the hand with the thumb over the bottom. So I'm just taking this out here so I don't get any mixing of paint. Get a nice sable brush now. And I'll have the watch melting over this finger, I think. So that the thumb is on the bottom of the watch there. So that is this side of the watch, then the other side melted over that finger. And that will be the winder there. a bit of Naples yellow. Okay, I've a quick change of plan here because I'm having problems with the linseed oil. I need it to dry a little bit better before I put the detail on. That's not working at all, so I'm going to look at the bigger pieces of detail, the background cliffs. This is dry, look here. We'll put this in. This area here is the budget case. And then I'm going to put on another piece of detail here so I can outline it. Let me just see how this is going. It's quite wet still. Okay, so the cliffs I think next, and get that detail in. Dali-esque this. I've actually stolen Dali's cliffs. I'm going to change them slightly. But they are straight from one or two of his paintings, these cliffs. The black outlining on the cliffs, Dali used a lot of black outlines just to show what he was trying to depict. So I think that's fair. There's a little bit here that's not quite right. I think we'll call that done for the cliffs. I don't want to spend too much time doing detail. The next step is we're going to put in Big Ben, or rather the Elizabeth Tower. Big Ben is just one of the bells inside. But we all call this Big Ben. That is going to go here on the end of the budget box, half on, half off. So not as easy as it seems. So I'm going to use this ruler I want it about there, so I'm just referring back to a Dali painting here. So the tower goes to about here and here. Yeah, nice. So the side that you can see, so that's the basic. So it goes up to about this height. Before the clock tower part, and that opens out a little bit here, it's a bit wider. Okay. And then above the clock tower there's a space. It's going to go right off the painting. Another square piece here. And then that's going to go right off there. That's okay. I think that's okay. And Big Ben is quite pink, isn't it? Pink sandstone. So I've got some pink here. Need some Naples yellow. Some flake white. And then this side of the tower needs to be a bit paler by the look of it. Right, that's the basic laydown of that. I'm going to leave that alone a little bit now. Go back to this budget box here and put the colour into that. We've got the basics of Big Ben, Elizabeth Tower here, and it's sitting on the budget box. Now I've got the budget box on screen on the computer, and it's a sort of a wine coloured briefcase with a special top, a shaped top. So I'm going to mix the paint for that. I've stopped using linseed oil now because it's not really drying that well. So I'm using liquid gel now, so that I can get this to go off a little bit quicker. This is a heavy gel painting medium. I've put a fair bit of liquid gel onto this flat palette, and I'm going to just wipe the brush off just a little, and then we'll start putting some colour in. And I'm starting with this nice crimson red. Crimson red. Just check with that, how close am I? It's missing blue. A little bit of ultramarine blue in there. It's a nice blue. And it'll probably be missing white. So let me just put some gel into this red. See how it brings the colour out, liquid gel. Drop little bits of the blue in. I keep looking up at the original object on the screen there, the subject, just to get a colour. So the colour is slightly dirtier. I'll just put a little bit of a mid-brown into that. This is burnt sienna down here. I think I'm going to just put the whole lot in, because it just dulls it down to that sort of colour. I'm going to use the same light source as we've got on the tower here. So I want the light on this side, so I'm going to slap this onto the top. I'm just using a flat, this is a flat number 8 hog's hair. I'm going to swap over to a synthetic to put the detail in a bit better in a minute. So that will be the top there. Just blobbed a little bit of paint in there, but I'll come back to the detail. Now the edge of that is black. I'm not going to put that on as yet. So I'm just going to separate some of this paint, just using flake white there to lighten it up, because I want this sort of dead flat colour. It's a flat leather surface on the briefcase. So let me just put some of that into there. A little bit of gel. This is a rowny colour, and I find that they're a little bit stiff for this type of painting anyway. Right, let's give this a try. That's nice because it brings out that rosy pink sort of colour that the budget box actually is. What I'm going to do is put this side slightly lighter, so I'm just going to bring in a little bit more of the white. Won't go too close to that edge. This is going to be a tunnel run through the box. And the bottom of the front will need shadow of some sort. We'll get round to that in a moment. Okay, I'm just going to wipe this off. Put this brush on one side a minute. Now where's that lovely new brush? Lovely new brush here. Lovely new brush here. So it's a Winsor & Newton Galeria brush, and it's a synthetic sable. Very flat. This is a number 4. But it's very smooth and flat across the top, which is what I want at the moment. So I'm not putting any paint on. I've got paint on here already. Let's just put that edge in. So I've got to put paint back onto it now, because this has scrubbed the paint away slightly. But while it's doing this with no paint on, I shall run along that edge there. and just try and make the highlight on the box. Okay, just going back to the other brush. Not quite so easy to work with liquid and gel if you're not used to it, because the paint, it becomes semi-transparent, so you have to take a bit of care with it. I'm going to leave that alone for a little while now and just give these brushes a quick clean off, because that's the basis of that, okay? And then we'll put some detail on. We'll give that gel a little time to dry off on the surface and go back and put a bit of detail on and put this tunnel in. And then we'll have a look at this hand that I've started and its reflection. So before I do any more detail, I just want to darken off the background. I've got the Dali picture up here on the screen. He put the foreground in quite dark to give the whole thing more depth. I don't want to go that dark, and I do want some things like pebbles and things showing in it. So I'm just going to fill a lot of the background and the surround of the lake. A little bit more detail now. I'm going to work on the pocket watch here. So I'm using a sable at the moment. I'm just softening up the paint here. I want this paint fairly thick. Just put a bit more movement into this. So it's a wee bit clumsy at the moment, this watch. Often quite difficult to work with sable brushes with oils because they don't scrape enough paint onto the surface very often. But it's coming out right now. Salvador Dali used long brushes so that he didn't have to touch his painting very often. He must have had very good brush control, because that's not something I can do, I'm afraid. I have to get a bit closer in. Right, well, I've still got a little bit of black on the brush. Just go back down here. And gently put the darker colour in. We want this to be fairly subtle. So some of the detail going well. Just going to darken this bit of the landscape up here. Now, while I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm going to have a look at another timepiece here. And fill the detail in later. Just going to put a little bit of yellow onto that. Right, that's the basics of that done. I think that's gone quite well. So I'm just going to let this dry overnight now. Then do a bit more detail. So this is the budget box. I've got to do a piece of detail here, some writing on here, and then we look at Big Ben itself. And we're going to have this all melted away, this clock face all melted away, and this one absolutely starting to melt, so coming out here and oozing down. Just a few little things like that around. And then when this is all dried a little bit more, put more detail into this hand, and then we're getting towards the end. So I'm going back to Big Ben here, and I've had an idea for Big Ben. I'm going to cheat a little bit. I've got a pound coin. I'm just going to put it on in the right spot. Just didn't want to get the shape wrong from the outset. So that comes in a little bit. And then the other one, the other face is here. An ellipse. Remember talking about ellipses? Okay, so let me just draw that. I think what I'm going to do is melt this clock out completely. So let's have it melted out. And running down the tower, so that will be that clock. Run down the tower. So I've got to put the detail in that goes around this. So I'm just going to mark off areas of detail here. I'm not going to worry about how many downward shadows there are. But what I will do is when I come to put the colour on, I'm going to turn the board round and do it on its side. And that's quite dark up there. Okay, I'm going to use some oil pastels to start with. So I'm using a dark brown oil pastel. This is a 530 dark brown. Just to help me get started with this. Really dark right to the edge. That's a good thing. We like light against dark. It's always handy to have light against dark. But the inside of this is going to be dark, so I must put a white bezel or a pale bezel around where the clock has been. I'm fairly happy with that marking out. So I'm going to look at the detail of this clock. So let's start with putting the very dark background in, and then we'll actually do the clock itself. I'm dabbing that off because I want that to dry fairly quickly and I want it to be quite dull. See the oil pastel that I've used for lining is getting taken in by the paint. So it's a very handy medium for drawing out fine detail. That's a little bit high up for me, so I'll do that with up here. I'm going to do when I turn the board around. All a bit tense that. lot of horrible detail. Okay, that's all I'm going to put on in that direction. I'm going to turn the board round now and just reset it, so I'll be with you in a moment. Okay, so I've mixed up a slightly darker colour. I've got my nice flat sable brush, just running down this edge. Okay, and then I'm just going to run down this edge, inside edge. Oh, very tense moments there, everybody. So I'm just going to turn it round. And we're just going to look at little bits of detail. So mixing brown and black together. And we're putting in bits of shadow detail, really. Just from the shapes of the stonework, we know that there are little shadows underneath these ledges. I need a shadow coming across here. So I'm just going to pop a shadow in to ground it on this box. So I've just used my box top red, and this is a classic trick. Mixed it with a dark green. This is just a bit of vermilion, mixed it together, and that should make a perfect shadow colour for me. Just going to use the ruler because I need straight lines really on this, roughly. Okay, just fill that in. Shadow's always darkest nearest the foot of the building. It's called the umbra. There it is, sitting on there, but not quite really sitting on there. That's sort of the effect I'm after. Let's put a bit of shape into the actual stonework. Okay, that's just right, that's just how I want it. So the next thing is to have a look at a bit of colour in the clock. I think that's okay for the clock. So a little bit of black detail. I've got this brush with a little bit of black on. Okay, we'll just turn the board again. Right, this has a dark edge. Right, I'm just going to turn the board back. That's Big Ben finished. So I've got a picture of the budget box over here, and I'm just going to put a little bit of the detail onto my budget box. First, starting with an opening. First of all, I'm not going to worry about the locks and the handle. I'm just going to have an opening so it looks as though it opens across here, and then some of this fine detail that's on here. Right, a little bit of detail on what is supposedly the budget box here. So it has the Chancellor of the Exchequer's title on it. So I'm just going to pop it on with some white paint. Lettering is never the easiest thing to do. Particularly when it's at an angle. The only bit of that that I don't like, just get a little bit of kitchen roll, is see. That's okay. The rest is fine, so I'm going to put some yellow in because it's in gold in the actual thing. Let's find a nice yellow. Call that done. Then on to the next thing is this watch here, just to get a little bit more proper detail onto it. Okay, I'm just going to leave that like that. I could do lots more detail. But I think that does enough. That's a little bit strange, but it'll do. Right, I've got a little bit of black on this brush. The next thing is complete this hand, and the reflections should be slightly different. These little bits that have gone off need to be dropped in a little bit, so they need a little bit of shadow. And then we're sort of getting close to the end of this one, I think. So I'm just going to use this Dali hand over here. I'm going to do it exactly the same, but I'm going to use that type of, this hand of God we think there. I'm going to use that type of painting. Right, I'm calling that done. Right, we can call that bit done. Okay, just need this brown again. That's the shadow at the back of the little pools. Getting a bit difficult to know where to put my hand at the moment. Some little darker bits at the front sort of signify a little shoreline. And then they just need here and there a little bit of white. So just one more feature, I just need some balance down here. So I'm just going to put one extra little feature in. What I thought I would do would be, I need to add a feature in here just to get some balance here. It's 5p coin, and I thought I would quickly dabble in a few pieces of silver on the desert floor here. But I'm using a brush with white paint on, and here we go. And maybe we should have a small one stuck in the floor. Just a little bit of detail to put on, which is going to be quite difficult because the paint is still wet. So I've just got time to tell you a little story. It's a little tale about me, Salvador Dali and William Blake on a day out in London. So when I was an art student, I decided to pop along to the Tate Gallery one day and have a quick look at a Joan Miro exhibition, because it had good reviews. And I wasn't there very long. I didn't care for Joan Miro and his work. I thought the reviews were overblown. Didn't think much of it at all. And I'd heard there was an exhibition at Sotheby's. So I decided to pop up to Bond Street. And the Sotheby's exhibition was great, I've got to say. And then when that was finished, I popped across the road to one of the little Bond Street galleries and walked in, and there was nobody there. Then a lady came out of a back room and said, "Hello, would you like coffee?" She mistaken me for somebody else, obviously. And I said, "Yes, I'd love coffee." And it was Blue Mountains with Demerara sugar. That was the thing in those days. And then she said, "The exhibition's upstairs," or she said something like, "The paintings are upstairs," something like that. Gave me the coffee, and off I went upstairs, and I was the only person in there. I'm sure they thought that I was a buyer, because it was an exhibition of Salvador Dali and William Blake paintings, originals, including the Narcissus painting and William Blake's God on a Cloud. Forgotten what that's actually called. So I was there about half an hour, got another cup of coffee, and absolutely terrific being left alone. The lady went off into a back room, left me alone with those paintings, gave me time to look at them close up and touch the surfaces, obviously, to find out how they painted. William Blake's pictures are very small, most of them, and Dali's aren't as big as you might think. But the surface of Dali's painting, terrific. He worked it and worked it and worked it with different gels and things over the top. So it was a good day. And when I told my fellow students, they were mad. They'd missed out on that. And then the very next week, I was in Warwickshire at a little museum where people know me, and the lady curator of the time was on her own there, and she wanted to go and do a bit of shopping before the shop shut, so she asked if I would just look after the place for a few minutes while she went to the shops. She'd known me since I was a kid. So I said that was fine, yes, I'd hang on there. Yeah. So off she went. And then I realised that they had Hokusai and Hiroshiga originals on exhibition. So that gave me chance, all alone, to have a close-up look at those. So I had 2 good weeks of being able to look and handle some of the most famous paintings in the world, all by accident. I'm going to call that done. Okay, so it's in the style of Dali. Doesn't have quite as much detail as he would put in, but I haven't got his sort of time. So we shall call this The State of Politics, or The Sands of Time. If you enjoyed this, please like, comment, don't forget to comment please, I always reply, and subscribe. You haven't been subscribing. I need you to subscribe so you see that what else I'm putting on next, and ring that bell notification. So this is from me in the studio, me and Salvador Dali. See you next time.